universities, hospitals, and factories have been bombed. In Israel, Iran's retaliatory attacks are causing more damage and injuries. At least one person was killed in Tel Aviv. A new front opens in the conflict. Yemen's Houthi rebels launched missiles towards Israel in support of their ally, Iran. And countering Iranian drones with Ukrainian technology and expertise, President Volodymyr Zelensky visits Gulf nations to seal defense deals. In Lebanon, Israeli forces kill 3 journalists in a targeted attack on their car. A month of war that began with the assassination of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. A war that has become an existential fight for Iranians, a war of shifting objectives, sometimes confusing rhetoric, a war that has exacted a heavy toll on lives and livelihoods, both in the region and abroad. In the past 24 hours, Israel and the United States have struck at the heart of Iranian industry. The strikes on steel plants in Isfahan and Khuzestan could prove to be a major setback. The foreign minister promised that Israel would pay a heavy price. Iran has maintained its retaliatory attacks, sending waves of missiles and drones into Israel. One person was killed in Tel Aviv and several others were wounded across the country. And in a major escalation, Yemen's Houthis have joined the war. The Iran-aligned group launched a barrage of missiles towards Israel on Saturday. The Israeli military has confirmed that a missile was intercepted.
The Yemeni armed forces, with the help and the grace of God Almighty, has done its first military attacks with the barrage of ballistic missiles against sensitive military targets in the south of occupied Palestine. This operation coincides with the heroic operations by the Mujahideen in Iran and Hezbollah in Lebanon.
In Lebanon, Israeli strikes have killed 3 journalists. That's according to a local media union. Fatemeh Fatouni was a reporter for Mayadeen TV. Her brother, Mohammed, a cameraman, was also killed. And Ali Shuaib, pictured on the right, was a correspondent for Al Manar. Al Jazeera is live in Tehran, in Ramallah, in the occupied West Bank, and in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia. But first, we start with Ali Hashim, who's in the Iranian capital. So, Ali, when you factor in everything, the damage that Iran has sustained, but also how the country has retaliated, the leverage that has been gained versus the leverage that has been lost, how do Iran's leaders really think that they're doing 1 month into this war?
Well, it's been 4 weeks now, and Iran is in the middle of this war, a war that it says it's not its own choice. It wasn't of its own choice. It's imposed war on it. This is how the Iranian officials are always describing this this conflict. As a matter of fact, Iran has been through a lot of destruction. I'll read some numbers, official numbers. 92,000 civilian units, including 71,000 residential. In Tehran alone, 30,000. More than 20,000 businesses destroyed. Around 290 healthcare centers destroyed, 600 schools. So these are the numbers. And on top of all of that, you have 2,000 people, at least 2,000 people killed and thousands injured. And the war continues. It's just that the war hasn't come to an end. To them, militarily, they are doing good. This is how they are expressing themselves or reflecting on how they are dealing with the situation. They are fighting on several fronts now. They're still launching the rockets. And the most important thing, they are weaponizing their assets, such as their control over the Hormuz Strait. They're weaponizing it and pushing the United States to come to the table, to talk to them, because of the kind of globalization of the conflict. You know, the conflict was supposed to be limited. This is how President Trump wanted it to be. Limited within Iran, precise, killing the leader, having a new leadership, talking with respect to all the points. Then Iran just changed the the whole thing. It regionalized the conflict, created a sort of a regional war. Later on, another front was open in Lebanon. It's been attacking the regional countries, GCC countries. Then, just today, this morning, we have the Yemenis entering the war. So it's a multi-front war, and there's another strait that might be waiting to be closed. So weaponizing more assets in the region. To the Iranians, they think right now that they've been able to reframe this war.
Ali Hashem reporting from the Iranian capital, Tehran. Everybody, all sides in this conflict are projecting victory, some measure at least of success. Noor Day is near Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Noor, what's the Israeli government saying about its war, its military campaign 1 month in?
Well, Cyril, the Israeli government says that it has been hugely successful, not just in assassinating dozens of Iranian leaders, starting with the supreme leader on the first day, but also in undermining and degrading the system's ability to survive. Of course, initially, the Israeli prime minister had promised that this whole system would collapse, that this was one of the objectives. Now he has walked back that promise, saying that, well, you know, collapse might happen after the war. So the focus as far as Israeli framing and narrative and military action has now shifted to infrastructure. There was a period of time when the targets were police stations and, you know, the Iranian government's ability to maintain law and order. Now it's steel factories and other important infrastructure, in addition, of course, to the hospitals and universities and so on. And the framing here in Israel is that this will make Iran unable to recover. That's really where the messaging has shifted, Cyril, because, of course, the fact that Israelis 1 month on are still having to deal with going to the shelters, are still unable to send their kids to school, is mounting political pressure that is being exploited by the opposition. But it doesn't seem that Israel has many answers when it comes to that, because it doesn't seem that this is resolving anytime soon.
Noor, what about Israel's other front, which is their fight, their war against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon? Israel has expanded its ground operation. It is very hard, I would say, from the outside looking in, and you tell me if you know otherwise, to gauge really how that is going. We know that Israel has lost soldiers, they've lost some tanks, Hezbollah is pushing back, but we don't know the losses on their side. What is the Israeli government saying about that war?
Well, that's where things get a bit trickier, Cyril, because whereas the Israeli public is by and large still supportive of attacking Iran, the idea that opening another front with Hezbollah would have been popular is debatable. This is especially true because the Israeli prime minister had promised that Hezbollah was finished. That was back in November 2024. And now you have it, you know, much of the northern communities, the border communities in Israel, the residents there are leaving because the state cannot protect them. They are underserved. The sirens go off sometimes every 20 minutes, and that is creating a lot of anger and frustration. It's not so much about the losses of the Israeli army in terms of soldiers, and there have been soldiers killed and injured, and the Israeli Broadcasting Authority has been reporting in the past hour that the army is kind of fudging the figures, talking only about grave injuries and moderate injuries and not the whole picture. But that's not really where the focus for the public is. It's about what happens next. You cannot promise to dismantle an organization like Hezbollah. You cannot do that realistically, but that is what is being promised, and the expectation is that hundreds of thousands of Israeli soldiers will be engaged until that is done, and that's not expected to, finish anytime before June.
Noor Day reporting from Ramallah. Thank you very much. And as we've mentioned, Yemen's Houthis have joined the conflict in the Middle East. The group says that it launched a barrage of ballistic missiles towards Israel on Saturday in support of Iran. Israel saying that it intercepted one missile and sounded air raid sirens in the south. Nida Ibrahim reports from Ramallah.
a significant escalation in a region already on high alert.
The Yemeni armed forces, with the help and the grace of God Almighty, has done its first military attacks with a barrage of ballistic missiles against sensitive military targets in the south of occupied Palestine.
And with that attack, Yemen's Houthis entered the war, making this Israel's third active front. The Israeli army says air defenses intercepted one missile before it reached Israeli territory. It comes as domestic tensions are emerging. Israeli military officials are pushing back against the government's strategy in southern Lebanon. More troops have been deployed to expand what it calls a buffer zone, pushing deeper into Lebanon. Media reports suggest the Army's chief of staff is concerned by the continued exemption of ultra-Orthodox Israelis from conscription. In Israel, the Houthis' decision to join the battle is seen as a retaliation to strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities and an attempt to strengthen Iran's position in indirect talks with the US to end the war. It's also a message from the Yemeni group, an Iranian ally, to Washington. With exports through the Strait of Hormuz largely blocked, maritime traffic in the Red Sea could be next. The Bab el-Mandeb Strait, an important commercial shipping route, is also used by US carriers to reinforce its military presence in the region. The Houthis have disrupted shipping before, attacking vessels in the Red Sea during Israel's war on Gaza.
It's no secret that any escalation to prolong the war serves Israel's political and military goals. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been careful not to defy the US president, but he has repeatedly stated that Israel would totally dismantle not just Iran's nuclear facilities, but its ballistic missile program and even its military.
And these Israeli goals do not appear to be aligned with those of the US. A potential end of the war or even a ceasefire is concerning to many in Israel. And that's why Israel is expected to keep trying to jeopardize any diplomatic progress and push for further escalation. Nida Ibrahim, Al Jazeera, Ramallah, Palestine.
Well, the Houthis are arguably the most powerful of Iran's non-state allies. They have much greater military capabilities. Youssef Mauri reports from Yemen's capital, Sana'a.
Just a couple of days ago, the Ansar Allah Houthis issued out a number of warnings saying that their finger is on the trigger. The warning phase, we can say, has officially come to an end. And the finger that was on the trigger, well, that trigger has been pulled. And it has also pulled Israel into a third front, and that third front is being represented from Yemen. What this front from Yemen is going to represent to Israel is a threat from air and a threat from sea. We already know that Israel is currently overstretched, trying to intercept all of the Iranian hypersonic and ballistic missiles, and also trying to intercept the rockets being launched from Hezbollah from southern Lebanon. And now their military and their air defense system is going to be completely stretched because Yemen has proven that they're able to launch ballistic missiles and hypersonic missiles and drones on a daily basis if need be. So what it looks like going forward is that perhaps the entire region could be heading towards an all-out war if all sides continue to play with fire. But from Yemen, this represents a threat from air and from the sea. Of course, I'm referring to Bab el-Mandeb, which is one of the most strategic choke points in the entire globe. And 12% of the world's economy trade flows through Bab el-Mandeb. So if a blockade is imposed by the Ansar Allah Houthis against Israeli vessels, that could severely impact their economy.
Al Jazeera's Rasul Sardar is in the Saudi capital, Riyadh. So, Rasul, right up until the moment this war started, Gulf countries had prioritized stability for their economic development, their overall development. They all want to, put their economies on track, and they all have multi-year plans to do this. And all of a sudden, the conflict interfered with their vision for the future, essentially, for their region and their part of the world. And they've been under daily attack. How deep has the damage been to this part of the world?
Well, the damage on the GCC countries is tremendous. Perhaps this was never imagined by anyone. So since the beginning of the war on 28th of February, so 5,000 projectiles, more than 5,000 projectiles were fired from Iran. That is making 85% of all of the projectiles that Iran has fired. And they were targeted at the GCC countries. Just to give you a sense of the scale of the attacks and the disruption here for United Arab Emirates. So the Ministry of Defense of the Emirates has just released the numbers. So we're saying that Iran, since the beginning of the war, has launched 398 ballistic missiles, 15 cruise missiles, 1,872 drones. And just the latest salvo alone, 20 ballistic missiles, 37 drones were engaged in a single day. And as a result, 178 people were injured, 11 people killed, including 2 members of the UAE's armed forces. So that goes with all of the other GCC countries. So we have seen the huge oil refineries that have been attacked. Indeed, just 2 days ago, the GCC Secretary General, Jassim Mohammed Al Budaibi, he said that 6 large oil refineries have came under attack, and these are the lifeline of the global economy. Civil aviation, tourism is being affected, flow of the medicine, the foods, residential areas, military areas, oil tanks, the petrochemical storages. So, and it is not only about this material damage, but it is also a severe damage on the reputation of the Gulf cities being the safe hub for the business. And this war is turning to be an existential threat to the stability, economic stability of the region.
Rasool, the United States has opened communications with Iran. They're not direct, but still, there is a window for something approximating diplomacy to resolve this conflict. That is one possibility. But at the same time, the U.S. is sending thousands of shock troops, Marines and paratroopers to the region, and that may end up escalating the fighting very soon. Do we know what Gulf countries want?
Indeed, though that no one has a clear answer for that. So, but the GCC countries here, their position is quite clear. They're saying, well, we prioritize the diplomacy. They're not involved in mediating efforts, and according to the statements, official statements, but they say we prioritize the diplomacy. We want this war to end quickly through the diplomatic engagements. However, they're also warning Iran to stop its attacks and its proxies attacks on the GCC conference. And increasingly, we're hearing almost on a daily basis from some of the officials, high-ranking diplomats, referring to the Article 51 of the United Nations, which is about the right of self-defense when a country comes under attack so it can retaliate. As of now, nothing has materialized, but there are increased references to that. There are a couple of things that they want. First, they want to be at the table. If there is going to be a negotiating table, because what this war has shown is when there is a war between Iran, Israel, Iran and the United States, GCC countries are the first victims. So they want to be there and communicate their terms. And also, this war has